have enjoyed this really beautiful day with Garibaldi, Pia, those beautiful glaciers, and Nuts class with our boatswain Canito. Now it's time for a presentation, a talk, the Strait of Magellan. Okay, well, first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Sebastian, part of the expedition team, and I will be more than glad to show this presentation, which is more or less 500 years of history in, let's say, 50 minutes. Okay, so I will try to make it pleasant. I will do my best for that. Okay, so this presentation is going to be, of course, we are going to get some historical facts of this, why did people came over here, so, and of course, as this presentation is the Strait of Magellan, we're going to be talking about the strait as well. So, first of all, are we ready to begin? You have all your drinks or so?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfecto. So, I think you already know this satellite image. Really important to say this is a satellite image, this is not a map. Of course, there's some information over there which you can read by yourself. This is general information about Tierra del Fuego, which is divided between Chile and Argentina. This is where we are, somewhere around there. And Punta Arenas being the most important city from Chilean side, and Ushuaia the most important city from the Argentinian side. Over here we have the three natural interoceanic passages, which the first one was, first, I would like to say officially navigated, not discovered by Ferdinand Magellan, 1520, which is the topic that we're going to be talking now. The second one, the Drake's Passage, 1616, by the Dutch sailors. And then we have this, the Beagle Channel, two trips by the Beagle, Fitzroy and Parker King as well, 1826 and 30s as well. So, but this, as I mentioned before, this is a satellite image. What does it mean? When people came over here, did they have satellites, satellite image? Did even have nautical charts? So it was pretty much coming over here blindfolded. And this nautical chart, this map, was made during those navigations over here. So this one is shortly made after the discovery, well, the official navigation through the Drake's Passage. So we have over there the Cape Horn, but as you can see, there's not much detail about the land over here. We have a quite nicely detailed Strait of Magellan, but there's something missing over here. What is it?
The Beagle.
The Beagle. According to this map, we will be stranded over there, not possible to be on a ship. So this is really important, remarkable for us to know that people, it was an adventure, coming over here blindfolded, with a focus, determined to come over here. For what? Why people came over here? So before coming to the main topic, the Strait of Magellan, we have to have some historical context over here. Do you know why people decided to expand their horizon? Gold. Trade. Let's call trade. Let's call spices. Okay?
The Orient.
So the spices. I got confused. The spices. The spices, what about the spices? Have you ever heard about the Silk Road?
Yeah.
So we have to understand how was this the world context of those years. So we have this the Silk Road, which was pretty much a connection, a web, a mesh between Asia and Europe, where it's not going to be brought spices. That's called the nutmeg, the peppermint. What else? Pepper, nutmeg, ginger, yeah, you name it, pretty much everything that we use today. Vanilla, exactly. So actually, it's called the clove. It was the king. You can use this, the most beloved one. Actually, the nutmeg too, and cinnamon too. All those spices really, really important. So it was this connection from Asia to bring all those things to Europe, but as you can see, it's not going to be just one straight line, and it's going to be farmed somewhere over there in the Spice Islands, the nutmeg, let's say, and it's going to be passing from one hand, 2, 3, 4, 17 different hands in order to reach to Europe. And it's not only spices, it's silk, the Silk Road, it's gold, slaves, ivory, ginger, many goods that Europe is going to be quite, it is necessary. It is wealth. And this started in those years of the Roman Empire. They have everything, and then we have this dark moment of this the Middle Age over there in Europe, which pretty much all stopped. When food was tasteless, was when those things was not that good to eat. It was only food. Let's say when we have pepper, when we have some other spices, it's when gastronomy began over here in Europe. So it was an explosion of flavors in every meal. Let's say some beer with ginger as well, maybe. Okay, but that's to understand more or less what was this thing of the Silk Road. But what has to do with the Strait of Magellan? Has to do with the fall of Constantinople, which is the capital of the Roman Empire, the eastern side over here, where now is Istanbul. So let's try to understand a bit. All of this was the Roman Empire, and it was Christianity. Then the Ottoman, the Turkish, took control of it once again. So it was Muslim, the Muslim culture over there. So we have this change of paradigm. So it doesn't mean that they didn't have any spice from one day to another, but they had to pay much more taxes. So you needed to expend much more money in order to get all those beloved spices back home over here in Europe, where it was not just for cooking. Let's say if I had enough cloth, I could be Lord Sebastian. I could buy some titles. I could buy some properties. I could buy many, many things. So it was wealth. It was a status. It was privilege. So women would use pepper in order to get this fresher smell. And let's talk about seduction. Let's say the silk for the women, for all those dresses. And actually the Pope wanted to ban this because it was too much ahead of time. So we have to understand how important all those gods were from Asia. And of course we have this Swahili road over here bringing some of the slaves, ivory, gold over there from the southern part. But what happened? Venice, really good merchants, they had this connection with Istanbul, so they got pretty much the monopoly from all the spices, and they were selling all those spices to the rest of Europe. And what happens to this Portugal and Spain, this Iberian Peninsula? They won't have the best quality, and they will have to pay a lot of taxes. So pretty much this will be one of the first motivations for those tiny countries at the border of the world. Remember, we have to remember that they didn't know much about the Atlantic, they didn't know about the Americas, they didn't know about the Pacific. So pretty much all the navigation was through this Mediterranean Ocean. Let's say Portugal was doomed to have these waters which you couldn't sail, which you're going to face those huge waterfalls, dragons, and you're going to get burned over there. So it was doomed over there. It was the least favorable position for any country over there in Europe. But even so, they ventured to go over there. So ventured to just try to do something. So it's actually Vasco da Gama who's recognized the first one who connected Portugal to the southern part of this Cape of Good Hope to reach India. So Vasco da Gama, okay? And there's a lot of history. There's Enrique el Navegante, Enrique the Sailor, who actually was the son of a princess, from prince and kings, and he will spend all his money in order to develop this Portuguese fleet. He will never go on board on a vessel, but he was called a sailor anyway. But it was the sponsor to just bring all this wealth to Portuguese. He will never see the fleet from Portugal, but he spent all his wealth into this task. This is Europe. But what about Asia? This is Eurocentric way of watching life. So what is it? This is a map, quite important. So this is Cagney's map from Korea. Can you recognize what do we have over here? Mm-hmm. No?
It's China.
This is China.
Yeah.
This is a really beautiful map, very beautifully detailed painted map. We have a lot of villages over here, the rivers quite precise. If you can actually Google it when you have seen it, you are going to be able to see where Germany is, where Denmark is, where the European countries are. So this is Asia, China, what is it?
Japan.
Korea, what do we have there?
Japan.
Japan, over here. They failed a bit. So this is Africa. This is the Arabian Peninsula. Over here we have the Mediterranean Ocean, Sea, and over there the Caspian border. So this means they have knowledge, they have an understanding of the world is bigger. It will be spreading to the east, to the west. Sorry, but how? Not quite sure yet. But there's a conception of more. So this is 402, which we have this connection from Europe and Asia, which it was said that Vasco da Gama was the first one from this Eurocentric point of view. And of course, talking about this Eurocentric, we have this equivalent, which is the Framaro map, which was a Venetian working under the Portuguese crown, and he developed this really beautiful map, and it's pretty much the same. We can see over there the center of the European universe, which is the Mediterranean Sea. Over there we have Spain, Portugal, Italy, all the countries. Africa, quite similar with what is today. And then Asia spread, Middle East and Asia spreading somewhere to the east. So it's pretty much the same. We have this concept, this notion of the Silk Road spreading over there. How is it precisely? We don't know yet, but we have to discover this. So this is in the 1400s. But this map is just remarkable. This is Pir Reis Map. And who is Pir Map? I'm going to close the curtain. I can keep talking. Do you know what a corsair is? No? A corsairs are like let's say a paid pirate. So Pir Reis was the nephew of Kamal Reis, one of the last corsairs from the Turkish Empire, who were fighting with Spain in order to take possession of the Turkish. So, in all those fights, Kamal Reis actually was able to steal a lot of information, a lot of maps from the Spaniards, and as well it has been said he could steal some information from Columbus, who in those years he was actually over there at the Indias, not knowing it was a new continent. But he will get a lot of information. So Pir Reis, it was the nephew of this corsair, and he actually was a cartographer, and he collected all this information and drew this really beautiful map. And what can we see over here? The Atlantic Ocean and the South American, American border over here. But what is really important for us, are we talking about the Strait of Magellan, is that at the very, very tip corner of the map we have this. Probably you're not going to be able to see, but believe me, it's quite precisely and detailed the entrance of the Strait of Magellan. When was the Strait of Magellan navigated at first? 1520, 7 years later. So this map will give us some hints, some clues that actually Magellan may have had some information. So it's same as today. If we have access to some information, we have the power. We are a few steps ahead of everyone. Access on those years were maps. So this is really important for us to understand. So now we talk about the spices that they needed to a new navigation route, a new, how to say, the commercial route to the Spice Islands, because they were paying too much taxes and this not favorable position from Portugal. But what happened? This Enrique Navegante, the sailor, paid for this development of the fleet, and it's when Bartolomé Diaz could finally reach this part over here, not facing this continent of sand and of fires quite dramatically, but he could reach the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. The first, maybe one of the first European expeditions that crossed to the southern hemisphere. New stars, another season of the year, so it was everything quite new. And over there, they reached over there. It was not the Cape of Good Hope, but the Cape of the Storms, where he faced some storms, and it was a mutiny after that. So they decided to go back, and he could not reach up to the Spice Islands, but they knew there was a gate in order to reach this new point. And then we have from the Spanish crown, Cristoforo Columbus, he would reach up to the Indias. He would say, okay, I arrived to Indias, to the Spice Islands, so I am here. We are few steps ahead of our rivals, Portugal. Did Columbus ever bring any gold?
No.
Any cinnamon? Clove? Something wrong over there. But I'm going to go over there in a minute. So 10 years later, we have another expedition from Vasco da Gama who actually could reach to Indias. And when he reached over there to Calcutta, he will get this exchange. So some trade, some, how to say, yeah, some, he would, how to say, to trade some spices with the people of India. But he did not know where those spice islands were, so he had the trade. But then, a few years later, he will come in a third navigation, in a third expedition with an army. White decided to take possession, to just conquer India over there with Vasco da Gama, the Admiralty of the Indian Ocean, with 1,500 people, unknown sailors, warriors, just devoted, who vowed for the crown, with this idea of new religion, to just help the God, to spread the word of God, went over there to just take possession of it. 1,500 people went over here. And then a few years later, they reached to Maluku Island, which is pretty much where Singapore is today, the Strait of Singapore, which pretty much was this connection with where all the things happen. I mean, all the things. We have so many vessels coming from Japan for exchange of spices. The Maluku Islands, Spice Islands are somewhere over there. So here it was a lot happening over there. So it's actually Vasco da Gama that came over there 1509. So it's quite important, this development of this conquering from the Spice Islands. Those are the Spice Islands. Timor, so well, this is where they get the most important spices over there, quite close to Singapore today, in Philippines. But what happened? We have these two countries, quite religious countries, Spain and Portugal, pretty much the favorite daughters from the Pope. Okay, so why? Because it would never say no of what the Pope would say. So those two countries were the most, the biggest income to the church. So they will be paying much more taxes. So what happens if they have this rivalry? They will start to have some wars. They were enemies. They will start spending money on war and not taxes to the church. So that's when we have the Pope, quite controversial one, who would say, okay, Alexander VI, I will divide the earth by two. Right to you, left to you, that's it. Easy as that. So this is it. That at the beginning in this the meridian over here 38, it was right to Portugal, left to Spain. Why so? Because they already had the navigation routes east and side, the Cape of Good Hope to the Portuguese, which they were somewhere around here at those years, and Spain, they have the Indias by Colon. So, not happy with that. Portugal, sorry, asked for more land. So it's nowadays we have this 46 parallel, thank you. And that's why in South America we have Brazil that they speak Portuguese, and the rest of South America Spanish. That's one decision of one person who didn't know that this was a new continent. They didn't know he was another ocean. They didn't know that there was a lot of things. So pretty much Portuguese, they own India, China, Japan, everything. Okay, so it's quite interesting, that time of the history. But what happened? Amerigo Vespucci. What does it sound like? America. Okay, so this is disaster for Spain. Amerigo Vespucci was quite an important pilot. Actually, he was the first pilot of this Casa de Contrataciones. What is the Casa de Contrataciones? Pretty much a bank that will sponsor all these explorations to the New World. And he had a lot of access. He knew many things in order to navigate all these areas. But what happened? Columbus were never bringing anything, what we talked before. So he decided to go over there. He actually was on those Maluku Islands and these Spice Islands, and he would say, okay, weather is different, natives are different, vegetation is different. So this makes no sense. So this is not the Indias, this is not the Spice Islands, so this must be another continent. And it will be a German cartographer, Martin Svansemüller, who would say, he would name and write, this is America, a new continent. So it was not this egocentric point of view, okay, I discovered this. So it will be a German cartographer. And then, of course, we have many others explorations. And Vasco Núñez de Balboa is one quite important, which he came to the area of Panama. He will cross this really thin and narrow area of land, and he will come to the other side, and he will find something quite interesting. Water, huge mass of water. What kind of water? Salt water. What does salt water mean? An ocean. So they have a new continent, a new ocean, so we have to discover it. We have to cross it, not to discover, we have to cross it in order to reach the Spice Island. This was all about the spices. It was nothing about, oh, let's see what is in here. We have to reach it over there. Some other exploration, this one quite important as well. He will come all the way down to Argentina. He will come to this Rio de la Plata. And so this would say, okay, we encountered this passage, this strait to the new ocean, the Southern Sea, which Vasco Núñez de Balboa called the Southern Sea. So we have this, we have it. So, but the thing is, they didn't do any proper measurement of salinity of the water or so. So they went back to Europe, and actually many people died. So it was not clear where it was and how it was. So it's here where Ferdinand Magellan will have the first. The crew members are going to be quite disappointed from this expedition. So talking about him, who was Ferdinand Magellan? Any idea? War hero? Nobleman? Portuguese? Japanese? Chinese? Who was Ferdinand Magellan? So we have to say he was an explorer, he was a sailor, he was a nobleman, fourth-class nobleman who actually was quite helpful because he could have access to the court over there. And Ferdinand Magellan, quite far from being a war hero, he deserved to be. He fought. He was one of those 1,500 people who fought with Vasco da Gama. He actually got many wounds, and it's quite interesting because he should have been a war hero because of the decision he took. He saved a few times the disaster of losing the war, but he was over there involved of those wars. So in those 10 years, Ferdinand Magellan, he spent over there in the Spice Islands, in their surroundings. He actually became not just a sailor, he became a warrior, he became an astronomer, thank you very much. And then he knew how to do everything. He became a merchant as well. So by this, the craft, he became who he was. A quite bold person, quite quiet. He never spoke that much. Always behind the shades, just waiting for the good moment to act. So this Ferdinand Magellan got wounded three times actually, and then he was sent back to Africa and back to Portugal, which there's some doubt that maybe he had some connection with these people over there in Istanbul with the traders. Do you remember Pir Reis Map? 1513. So he might have access with those maps, so he knew there's something down there. And he will come back again to fight with Vasco da Gama, well, not Vasco da Gama, with these first explorations over to Indias. In total, he will be spending 10 years over there. He will know everything about the Spice Islands. He will know and meet really important people. He will all this information collect for the biggest task or destiny that he has to the first circumnavigation of the world, Ferdinand Magellan. So what happened? At the end, when he was wounded quite bad, he was sent to Morocco, and then he was accused of treason. So he went to talk directly to the King Charles Manuel I, and he will say, okay, I'm not a traitor, I need to get my... He was degraded. He was not being able to be part of the fleet again, so all the salary was reduced pretty much everything, so he was not happy. He was not a person who stayed on land. He was not a person to be working at the court. He was a warrior. So can you imagine, when they left Portugal in the search for the spices, reaching 10 years later, the development of Portugal, the cathedral, it was a church, then became it was another Portugal. So he was not being able to stay over there. He needed the adventure. So he asked for the king, okay, I need to go back. I have a new route to go to the Spice Islands. And if we do this, we are going to outmatch the Spaniards. So we are going to be better. So the king would say, no, I'm not interested. So that's it. We don't require that. So then he will come another time to talk with the king, asking for the same things, salary, going back to the fleet, and if we didn't agree, he asked for permission to just renounce his nationality, to renounce to be Portuguese, to his name, Ferdinand Magellan, then he became Fernando de Magallanes, when actually he has permission to go to another country, another kingdom, and he went to Spain, King Charles I, a quite young new king over there in a nearly new kingdom. So he was Flemish. Spain was with not the same borders as today, but it was quite different. So he couldn't even speak Spanish. So it was quite handy for him, for someone to come with so much experience to say, we together we can go to the Spice Islands. I know how to get over there. But this king was quite poor, so they didn't have any money. That's why it took 2 years for them to sponsor, to just planify all this exploration. And it's where in Sevilla, La Casa de Contrataciones, this bank, which were sponsoring all these explorations, Ferdinand Magellan got access to it, and he was working over there, who met many persons who make them all helpful to go to this exploration, which will be 2 years later. In those years, we have this quite interesting book from Magallanes Stefan Zweig. It will be saying that what things they brought. So fishing hooks, playing cards, mirrors, spoon, forks, because he knew what the local people like to trade. So he brought all those things. He decided to bring the best wine quality, white wine. It will keep morale up, last much longer than water, and turns to vinegar. It's helpful to clean the deck. So all those decisions were made in those 2 years. So in 1519, they set sail from Sanlúcar de Barrameda to this expedition with 5 ships, not new ship, second hand. So they need to repair them. As you can see, we have 5 of them. Victoria here highlighted, the only one who came back, with total crew members of 265, and this is important. San Antonio, 120 tons. And this, the biggest, it's the storage, the warehouse, the floating warehouse actually, which they're going to have all the tools, everything for repair, food, and so on and so forth. So this is quite important. So, quite a resume. How was this expedition of the first circumnavigation of the Earth? So they set sail over here, Sanlúcar de Barrameda. They stay over here, the Islas Canarias, to get this wine. Then went all the way south to Rio de Janeiro. Then Rio Solís, Rio de la Plata, where it was supposed to be the strait to the new ocean, but it was the Rio de la Plata, so disappointment for the people. Then Puerto San Julián, which I'm going to explain, it was a huge mutiny, so Magellan has to act in a really bold and decisive way. Strait of Magellan, they cross it, and then 3 months crossing the Pacific Ocean, where they went to Mariana Trench, and over there in Mactan, this might be spoiler or not, Magellan died. This was 500 years ago, so he would be dead anyway. So in Mactan is where Magellan died, and it's where Juan Sebastian Elcano took control of it, and he was crossing this water from the Portuguese, which the Pope said it's not allowed for you to navigate through. So he had to take the decision to go all the way to Spain back. Quite short. This was 2 years and 8 months or so. So what happens over there in winter de San Julian? So they came over here to this Patagonia, windy Patagonia. I think you may have realized it's quite windy. New stars, as I told you before, different seasons of the year, so they needed to get some refugee in this bay. Ferdinand Magellan was Portuguese. All the other captains were from Spain, so they were not happy for one Portuguese, the enemy, being the main captain of this expedition. So, and actually he was so he never told where they were going, what was the idea, where was the goal or so. So people were not happy, so it was the first mutiny. So 3 of the 5 vessels, they went out to the bay and they surrounded them. So they say, we have to go back. This is no point. And Magellan, what did he do? Send one emissary over there with a letter for them to sign. So once they were signing this letter in order to surrender, what happens? This emissary turned to be a mercenary. So he killed one captain, they killed another captain, and then a third one was not killed. Why? It was the cousin of the king. So it's not a good idea to kill the cousin of the king, of the sponsor. So what did he do? He left him behind stranded with a priest and a sword. In order for them, oh, well, I didn't kill him, but maybe you die by yourself. And you have a priest over there to just purify your soul. So with this action, I don't know if they got the respect from the rest of the crew member or if everyone was afraid. So remember, Magellan was fighting 10 years over there in the Spice Islands. So he was quite interesting person. So after this, they will come, not after this. Well, do you know why Patagonia mean? Why Patagonia is called Patagonia? What does it mean? Land of the giants. Yes, more or less. So over there in San Julian, the Bay of San Julian, they have some contact with the local people, the Tehuelches, the huge, okay, the giants from the Patagonia, 1 meter 80, 1 meter 90, and the Europeans of those years, they were not that high, that tall, about 1 meter 40 or so. So it was one book, the bestseller of those years, Prima de Leon, where the main character has an enemy, which was a giant called Patagon. So that is one of the reasons. And actually you can say, 2 months passed before we saw any inhabitant of the country. One day, when we least expected it, a giant figure of a man appeared before us. It was on the sand, almost naked, and he sang and danced at the same time, putting dust on his head. This man was so big that our head came barely to his waist. Our captain called these natives Patagonia, Antonio Pigafetta, really important person I'm going to mention in a minute. And the other theory is that, you know what pata means in Spanish? A foot from the animals. And actually those natives used to rub some guanaco pelt in the foot in order to walk better on top of the snow. So the footprint is going to be quite big. So Bigfoot as well. So those are few theories of why Patagonia it's called Patagonia. So with San Julian, it's a bit further to the north. And over here, just before coming to the Strait of Magellan, which they entered the 1st of November, November the 1st, they have a shipwreck. The first ship lost. Not any human life. So they split in English, the different carracks, the naus, and they continue navigating. So they entered over here to this narrow Strait of Magellan, quite windy, quite hard to navigate. It's really narrow, so it's dangerous as well. No nautical charts, so they needed to be doing trial and error, going to every corner over here to see if it's possible to navigate or not. Taking samples of density of the water. If it's fresh water, it's a river. If it's salt water, it's still the ocean. So over here, right next to this Cape Forward, which is the southernmost point of the South American continent, it's where disaster happened. San Antonio, do you remember the vessel, the huge one? Mm-hmm. They were not happy with this. So they hid behind or in the fjordlands, so they just waited for the rest of the fleet to continue and keep navigating through the Strait of Magellan. So they deserted. They went back to Spain. So no provisions, pretty much no water, no nothing for them to continue the rest of the world, the next half. So then they will exit in 26 days the Strait of Magellan, when over there something quite unusual happened. Lucky or unlucky? No wind for 50 days. That's why he called the Pacific Ocean lucky, right? Why not? What do you need to sail? Wind. Therefore, it took 99 days, 3 months, for them to cross the Pacific. And that's where people start dying, perishing by scurvy, hunger, and so. And I told you before about Pigafetta. So it was the chronist of this expedition. It was an Italian guy, quite interesting person, not quite sure where he was, well, Italian, but he was pretty much like a hitchhiker. He would say, okay, I want to go for an adventure. He was not part of the crew, but he became the chronist. It has been said he was quite close to the Pope. So there's some theories that it was the ears and the eyes from the Pope itself, so he has control over there. And Pigafetta will write this book, and he will be writing those things. You can judge by yourself. So this, the strait, is surrounded by great beauty and high mountains covered with snow. I think that in the world there's not a more beautiful country or a better strait than this one. This is coincidence. We didn't put this because it's quite beautiful in here. No, but actually Pigafetta became this chronist. You can buy the book from Pigafetta. It's quite interesting to have the log from this navigation, the first navigation of the Earth. So after they crossed the Pacific 3 months without touching any land. Quite ironically, they didn't see any land of the Polynesians or so. They will reach up to one, okay? Mariana Trench, and they will come to Philippines. Carmencita. So they come over there to Philippines, and it's where Magallanes will die. He will face his death. He will never finish the exploration. He will never see the Spice Islands. But what happened over there? So 3 months after coming over here, oops. If you can give me 1 second, this is important. So Ferdinand Magellan actually was his way back to Spain. So he needed to start thinking what to do, because it was quite a bad thing to do to go back empty-handed. So the task was done. He got the navigation through the strait. Sorry for that inconvenience. And then he started thinking, okay, I need to bring numbers, I need to bring religion, I need to bring allies to the king. So if I start spreading the word of religion, I'm going to be saved, more or less. So that's why Ferdinand Magellan over there in Cebu have some alliance with local tribes. He said, okay, first of all, I need clothes, I need spices. So this chief would say, okay, I will give them to you, and I will turn to religion and to Christianity, but you have to help me defeat my enemies. So over here in this area of the Philippines, the Ferdinand Magellan knew, okay, I'm close to the Spice Islands, and I know that because he had a slave, a Malay slave, where he bought in the previous years, and actually he was able to communicate over there. So if he could communicate, means that they were closer to the Spice Islands. So the long story short, Magellan will go over there to face his death over there in Mactan, fighting this local chief, Lapu-Lapu, where finally Magellan will die because they were so proud of our armor. So they was fighting on the water, over there on the shore, and Magallanes will be one of the few who died. And then, sorry, there will be the rest of the team, the expedition will go back to Cebu, where those alliances actually broke, and it was disaster. 30 people who died again. They will be poisoning the meal or so. So they didn't have enough people to navigate the 3 remaining vessels, which they had to split into different vessels. They were jumping around in order to try to find their way back home, and finally they could see to get over there to Macau Island, where the spices were. So this is quite beautiful, and I really love this part of the history, because over here in Chile we have Ferdinand Magellan, Rio de Magallanes, Strait of Magellan. It's quite the hero of this region. But over there in Philippines, what happened? Lapu-Lapu, who killed our hero, is the national hero. So we have this monument which says here on April 27th, 1521, Lapu-Lapu and his men repelled the Spanish invaders, assassinating the leader, Ferdinand Magellan. Thus, Lapu-Lapu became the first Philippine to have repelled the European aggression. And I think this is remarkable. So this shows us that story has two sides of the coin. We have different realities and perceptions. So Lapu-Lapu being the national hero over there, actually it's the name of the airport as well over there, if I'm not wrong. So what happens to the different ships, the naos, the carracks? The first one, do you remember? Shipwreck quite close to Puerto de San Julián. Shipwreck San Antonio, deserted, went all the way back to Spain. Then we have the Concepcion. They needed to burn it because they didn't have enough crew members. So now they had to make a decision, where do we go through? And La Victoria with Juan Sebastian Elcano, they decided to go, okay, I'm going all in through this Indian Ocean through Portuguese waters. So I'm not going back through the Pacific Ocean. So, and the other ship, the Trinidad, they decide, okay, I'm going back through this so known, they believe to have a way back through the northern part of North America. So they say, okay, we're going back. But unluckily, Portuguese fleet chased them, they got them, so they were sent into prison, into jail. So everyone was looking for the Victoria. And in total, from the initials 265 men, the crew member, only 18 finished this exploration. After 2 years and 8 months, they came back over there to Spain. And for us to have a better understanding, this animation, you can see they will come to Rio de Janeiro, Puerto de San Julián, and look at this, 3 months through the Pacific Ocean, not touching land. Mariana Trench over there, Spice Islands, Juan Sebastian Elcano trying to save all the people, well, only 18, going back to Spain. And this is remarkable not because it was a huge expedition, but after this expedition, mankind already knew that for sure that the Earth was round. This was not just the first circumnavigation, it meant a lot. It meant technology, trading routes, or so. So it's quite important. So this is one section of the talk. Now we have to talk about Magellan Strait. So this was the Strait of Magellan. To the southern part is Tierra del Fuego. And the ancient myth, a Greek knowledgeable person, he said the Earth needs to have a counterbalance. In the northern side, the northern hemisphere, we have a lot of mass of Earth. So therefore, in the southern side, we need to have a counterbalance. The Terra Australis Incognita, which will be this. And Ferdinand Magellan have founded the Terra Australis Incognita, which the maps will say this. This is South America, Terra Australis Incognita, Africa, Oceania, and so. And nowadays we have Antarctica, which is that. It's not the same content, but it's interesting for us to have this idea. But what happened? Then we have a lot of maps. Since they knew that we have this new continent, a new ocean, these explorations or another nationalities came over here in order to get more information about this new continent, so they have more or less one shape, but always important the Terra Australis Incognita over here. There the development of the maps will be with the mountain ranges, with more information about the local people, flora, fauna, and always related with art as well. So, but this is quite important. The coursers of the Pacific, Francis Drake, 58 years later, he will be the second person who actually came through the Strait of Magellan in order to just steal all the goods from this of the Spanish crown, which they never wanted to come back through the Strait of Magellan. It was too expensive, too dangerous. That's why they built 2 ports at the site of Panama. If they will be crossing all the gold by mules, it will be much, much better. So what happened over here, Francis Drake will be the second person who crossed the Strait of Magellan, the first Englishman to be at the Pacific Ocean, and the second person and first captain who actually could navigate the earth. And he wouldn't have the same luck, or I don't know how to call luck or unluck, but he faced a huge storm over there. He was sent to the south, but he didn't see anything like earth. He didn't see this, wow, the Strait of Australis incognita. I just see a huge mass of moving water, quite rough. And it's going to be the first one who will say this is not such a thing as the Terra Australis incognita. There's something over there. This is not yet. And actually, well, to let you know, Francis Drake in this storm will be the first person the first records of the Jagans. We say, oh, I saw some canoe people, and that's it. But over there, Francis Drake. And then, with this notion of the Spanish Empire, they knew, okay, we have the backyard door open, so the corsairs time to come in, so we need to fortify. So this is the process of the colonization of the Strait of Magellan, and we have this quite interesting person, Pedro Sarmiento Gamboa, who actually got two interesting places to fortify. The narrowest point of the Strait of Magellan. He will give this the project to the king and say, okay, he went with 3,000 people, about 25 ships, all the way to this area to colonize, to settle, with women, kids, everything. But from the very beginning, this exploration was doomed. Shipwrecks, scurvy, a lot of people died. So more or less 300 people and a bunch of sheep made it over here. And then, long story short, they wouldn't be able to settle in here. So they tried, but Pedro Sarmiento Gamboa was sent back to the Atlantic Ocean, got into prison. The Frenchman got him. He was sent to prison to France. Then he was released over there in Britain. He was sent into jail again for the British. At the end, he would never come back to see his this try of colonization from the Strait of Magellan, and it's where Puerto del Hambre, Port Fermi is. It's actually people have anything over there to eat, anything to plant. So the woods were too far away, and the stream was too narrow. So it was a horrible place to try to settle. And one of the person who survived, I can say everyone was starving. It was ironically the cook. And it was saved by Thomas Cavendish, a really skilled corsair as well. Of course, then we have many more explorations. We talked already about this, but the Cape Horn, please look at the date, 1616. So the Dutch sailors came over here and they discovered a new passage. Look at this. 2 years later, we have this. So much more detail. So they find a new way. The Drake's Passage is much rough. It's really hard to cross, but it's wider. It means you are not going to have any shipwrecks, so it's much safer. First trip, Ferdinand Magellan, 1520. Second, Francis Drake, 60 years later. Then 1616, then 2 years later. We have all of this. And please look at this, the development of this navigation. It was this boom over here of the nautical charts of these explorers came over here from all nationalities, the Frenchman, the Belgian, of course, and this is quite important. This is the entry of the Strait of Magellan, drawn quite precisely in this Pir Reis Map, and with bathymetry, the depth of the strait over here. So it was a huge jump. Of course, the Frenchmen as well over here came a bit later, but they came over here anyway. So it's quite important, this process. And then we have, of course, we cannot mention, I cannot continue without mentioning the British, of course, Fitzroy with the Beagle. The idea of this was to map the nautical charts, or make the nautical charts of the southern coast of South America, and this quite precise map was used for the Chilean Navy till mid-30s. So precise was this map undertaking by the HMS Beagle, and the second voyage, Fitzroy as captain, came with this young man. I think you know him, Charles Darwin, probably. Have you heard about him? So they came over here to undertake this huge task. Now, the takeover of the Strait of Magellan has something quite important. We're not talking about colonies anymore. We're talking about Chile as a country, a new country actually. And the idea was to to send someone to sail over here. Actually, Bernardo Higgins, the liberator from Chile, would say we have to go over there, and send John Williams from Chile with the schooner Ancud to set over here at Fuerte Bulnes, the same possession, the same place that Port Femi, Puerto El Ambres, committing same mistake. But why they wanted to do this? Motor vessels. It was not necessary to sail through these areas. If you have motor engine over here, it was much easier and faster, and you are not going to be sent to the shore. So over there, the Fuerte Bulnes, which was this idea of colonization, was over there at the same place. And nowadays it's a museum, a side museum that you can go and visit over there. And as it was the same location, they have the same problems. So it's where they decided to move about 60 kilometers to the north to Sandy Point, Punta Arenas, where it's a much wider river, freshwater river, much more resources over there. Forest, of course, mining industry of coal, so it was quite better. So in that possession, in this location, it's where Punta Arenas start to flourish. This really beautiful, colorful city, thriving city in this quite, unforgiving areas that is the Patagonia. And you can see over there, we have this really beautiful city. We have the Strait of Magellan, this my beloved Tierra del Fuego. Well, does not belong to me, but it's belong to me. And over here we have the port. And what do we have here? My house. The Strait of Australis. So that's going to be you in the next days. So Punta Arenas, once known as the Pearl of the Strait, as I mentioned to you, the group that we were being together those days, Punta Arenas was at those years a gate between two oceans. It was the welcoming city from Europe to the Pacific. This was so many cultures in here. It was so much diversity over here. So we have newspaper, radio, different languages. So we have Irishmen, so many different cultures in here. So as was the Pearl of the Strait, Punta Arenas always in here. And that was so until the 1914 because of the Panama Canal. And then the vessels started going from the north. So over here, those years, we have the settlers over here, different nationalities, as I mentioned before. We have this coal industry, the mining industry in here, quite handy. And of course, we have this portual industry, really important until today in Punta Arenas, where actually we're going to reach to this port. Nowadays, it's a bit more modern, so don't expect that much now. Well, it's the same location, but this is the port of Punta Arenas. You can see this technology of those years. And of course, we have La Estancia, the ranch, where the ship industry, the estancias, is one of the 5 most important economies from the region. And actually, some curious facts, it would be said that about 50% of the wool sent to Europe for the World War I was from Patagonia, not Punta Arenas, from Patagonia. They were brought over here directly from the Malvinas or Falkland Islands. And talking about the ship, we have the monument to the shepherd. Punta Arenas, I don't know if you know, I don't think so, is the city with most monuments in Chile. And it will be the monument to the patience. This person, the shepherd, might not be as graceful as the gaucho, or not as graceful or adventurous as the North American cowboy, or the vaquiano over here in Chile, but it's the monument to the patience. It will be over there waiting, taking care of not just 1, 2, 3 sheep, maybe 1, 2, 300 or 1,000 sheep, knowing the Patagonian steppe, always alone with the company of this quite faithful company of the shepherd dog endemic, or well, not endemic, but the Magellanic shepherd dog, recognized as a native species. This is quite specific, it's an important person. It's a character of Magallanes. And of course, what we can see over there in Magellan, in Punta Arenas, this is the model, the replica, one of the Nao Victoria, the one who finished the circumnavigation of the world. And I have to mention, this is, I'm not sure if to be proud of, but Christian Manca, one expedition guide from from my team, but now it's in the other vessel, and the Ventus Australis. He devoted 5 years of his life to work on this in the construction of this vessel, so he knows a lot about Magellan. So he was managing this construction. So if you can go over there and visit, you're going to be shocked how small. This is like a nutshell in the ocean. I can't imagine to navigate the whole world in this thing, not even in this vessel. But it's unbelievable. You can go over there and visit. And of course, as I mentioned before, we have this presence of this multicultural life in Punta Arenas. We have this architectural style over there in Punta Arenas, right next to the main square, where we're going to reach Punta Arenas. You're going to, maybe if you come from Europe or you'll be there, this is similar. This is a neoclassicism style. All the this French style brought over here by the wealth of Punta Arenas. And what do we have in the main square? Of course, the main hero, the main character, killed by your main character, Lapu Lapu. It's watching at his biggest discovery, the Strait of Magellan, and pointing over there. Not, in my opinion, the best thing to put over there the natives, but it's over there, Ferdinand Magellan. And for finishing this presentation, I don't think, well, I don't know if you already know those flags. I hope you can recognize this one is Chile. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. But do you know this one? Where is it from? Oh, you're shy. You're falling asleep. This is Magallanes, the Región de Magallanes. And actually, you're going to see every Magallanico. The people from Magallanes are quite proud from the region. So whenever you see one of them in Europe, it's going to be backpacking or hitchhiking with the flag in the shoulder or the back. But they're quite proud of belonging of this really, as you can see, beautiful region of the world. And what does it mean? It has everything in here. We have this yellow color, the gold of the steppe, where the Patagonia, the gauchos and the ovejeros, the shepherds are. We have the snowy peaks of the Darwin and the Andes range, really beautiful, and the glaciers. Do you know this constellation over there? What is the Southern Cross? Everyone knew what the Southern Cross is, but what does it mean? It's the constellation for the sailors in the southern hemisphere to find the south. You will extend 3.5 times, drop it, and where it drops at the horizon is where the south is. And it's not just in the Magellanic flag, but New Zealand, Australia, Brazil, and pretty much all the other Commonwealth countries over there in the southern hemisphere. So it's really, really important. And the blue color, the Strait of Magellan. So this flag describes this very, very beautiful region from Chile. So with this, I would like to thank you, all of you, and we will leave some more information if you're interested. And again, thank you very much. It was a bit more than 50 minutes. So if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer.
Awesome. That was great.
Is there any question?
Nope. You covered everything. Thank you.
I hope I covered everything with truth.
Yes, you did.
Okay, my friends.
Awesome.
So thank you very much for your
Thank
attention.
you. Awesome.